Welcome back, history lovers. Tonight, I'm taking you into one of the most heartbreaking tales of Tudor England. The story of a teenage girl who never asked to be queen, but was forced onto the throne, only to pay with her life. She is remembered as the 9-Day Queen. This is the tragic fate of Lady Jane Grey. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss another dark and fascinating chapter of royal history. Lady Jane Grey was born in 1537 into one of England's most powerful noble families. Her father, Henry Grey, was Duke of Suffolk. Her mother, Frances Brandon, was the granddaughter of Henry VII. That bloodline placed Jane dangerously close to the English throne. From her earliest years, Jane was unlike other girls of her age. She did not dream of jewels or gowns, but of books and philosophy. Fluent in Greek and Latin, she adored the works of Plato and studied scripture with a devotion that astonished her tutors. One of her teachers described her as the most learned young lady in all of England. But Jane's intelligence and innocence would not save her from the claws of ambition. In 1553, King Edward VI, son of Henry VIII, fell gravely ill. Edward was only a teenager himself, but as a Protestant king, he feared what would happen if his Catholic half-sister, Mary Tudor, inherited the crown. Behind him lurked the shadow of John Dudley, Duke of Northumberland, one of the most ambitious men of the Tudor court. Northumberland had a plan to place a Protestant queen on the throne, one he could control. And who better than young Lady Jane Grey, a quiet, obedient girl, and conveniently, the wife of his son, Guildford Dudley. On July 10, 1553, Jane was taken to the Tower of London and crowned Queen of England. She was just 16, but Jane never wanted the crown. In her writings, she expressed confusion, fear, and sorrow. She understood she was being used, a pawn in a deadly game. Her reign lasted just 9 days. Across the kingdom, the people rallied not for Jane, but for Mary Tudor, the rightful daughter of Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon. Within days, Mary marched on London. The tide of history turned swiftly, and Jane was deposed without a fight. Jane and her husband were imprisoned in the Tower. At first, Queen Mary showed mercy. Jane was young, innocent, clearly manipulated by others. Mary had no desire to execute her cousin. But England was a land of unrest. In early 1554, the Wyatt Rebellion erupted an uprising against Mary's plan to marry Prince Philip of Spain. Jane had no part in the rebellion, but her very existence made her a threat. As long as Jane lived, she could be used as a figurehead by those who opposed Mary. And so, with a heavy heart, Mary signed Jane's death warrant. On February 12, 1554, Lady Jane Grey was led to the scaffold inside the Tower grounds. She was just 16 years old. Witnesses described her as calm and dignified, dressed in a simple white gown, her face pale but serene. After a short prayer, she was blindfolded. In that moment, her courage faltered. Unable to see, she reached out with trembling hands, searching desperately for the execution block. Her words echoed in the silence. "What shall I do? Where is it?" A kind voice guided her hands to the block. She knelt, whispered her final prayer, and placed her head upon the rough wood. Moments later, the axe fell. It's no secret that I love history. If you've been watching for long enough, you might have even picked up a thing or two. But with every great story, there are stories that don't get told. This is one such tale. It's a story of betrayal, political intrigue, and ultimately, a tragedy. And it's the story of the 9-Day Queen, Lady Jane Grey. So imagine, if you will, the year 1553. You are Lady Jane Grey, a 17-year-old girl who likes nothing more than reading books and enjoying the simple pleasures of life. Your father had served King Edward VI as his secretary, and you are close to the royal family. In fact, your cousin, the king, considers you his sister. But recently, things have been amiss. You'd had a falling out with his mother, the formidable Queen Dowager, Catherine Parr. When Edward fell gravely ill, Parr took the reins, much to the chagrin of many, including Jane's father, who believed that he had a better claim to the throne than her son, the sickly Edward. As Edward's condition worsened, Parr grew increasingly anxious about the future. Jane, though not in line to the throne, was a Protestant like herself and married to Guilford Dudley, a man who shared their religious zeal. So when Edward summoned Jane and her father into his deathbed and asked them to swear an oath to uphold his will, which named Jane's cousin, Lady Mary, heir to the throne, despite being Catholic, they agreed. But behind the scenes, Parr was maneuvering to make Jane the heir instead, telling her, "I see plainly that God will send another Harry VIII to break the will of the old king, and then thou shalt be queen." Perhaps emboldened by the queen's words or pressured by her scheming, Jane and her father went against their word and raised an army to depose Lady Mary. But their 9 days in the sun were over as quickly as they began. Lady Mary was proclaimed queen, and Jane was arrested along with her father and brother. While her father spent his remaining days planning revenge, Jane spent hers praying and writing books. Though she'd had a taste of power, she never sought it again, nor did she ever raise an army, never claimed ambition. She was a scholar, a child, a pawn caught between giants. In the end, her father was executed, her brother imprisoned, and she was allowed to live out her days under a shroud of secrecy. For Queen Mary, suspicious of any threat to her own power, kept Lady Jane Grey locked up until her death in 1558. No one knows exactly how or why Jane died, but perhaps that is the most cruel twist of all, that we remember nothing of her mortal end, only that she was executed on February 12, 1554, at the age of 17. Today, all we have are the stories, the rumors and the portraits, the paintings and the speculations. But in them, we see the tragedy of a young woman whose life was cut short, whose fate was sealed at birth, a victim of circumstance, of power, of ambition. One such haunting portrait is the execution of Lady Jane Grey, painted by Paul Delaroche in 1834. In it, Jane appears almost angelic, draped in white, blindfolded, vulnerable, while the world around her is shrouded in darkness, a symbol of innocence, crushed beneath the weight of politics and ambition. We may never know if Lady Jane Grey was destined to be executed, but her story reminds us of the cruelty of power, of how the throne of England was so often paid for in blood, even the blood of children. So I ask you, was Lady Jane Grey the most tragic victim of Tudor ambition, or was she destined, from birth, to be sacrificed in the name of power? Let us know in the comments below. And if you found this story as haunting as I did, make sure to like, subscribe, and share, because history is never just the past. It is the shadow that shapes us still. Thank you for watching.